All right, so our next matchup is Florida versus Tennessee. Florida comes in averaging about 43 points per game, and Tennessee scores about 20 points per game. What I'm looking at in this matchup is a Tennessee team who is literally on the verge of um, basically reaching its breaking point and not being able to finish out the season. And Jeremy Pruitt's job is definitely on the line in these remaining three ball games. Cal Trask comes in completing 71.4% of his passes, a little over 10 yards per attempt. Now, Cal's thrown for 34 touchdowns, three interceptions. That's one INT every 91 attempts. So basically, one out of every almost two and a half ball games, that's when Cal's throwing an interception, which is fantastic. Uh, Concerning thing for the Florida Gators is their inability to run the ball, only averaging from their running backs 95.5 yards per game. Pierce, 412 yards, Davis, 196, and Wright, 156. They combined have four rushing touchdowns. This is something that they're going to have to fix before facing Alabama in the SEC championship game. For Tennessee, Jared Garantano. If you've listened to the podcast, you've heard me say that the Tennessee team needs to move on and start one of the young quarterbacks and figure out which one of those, whether it's Mauler or the other kid, can be the starting quarterback for the future of this Tennessee ball club. Jared Garantano, six touchdowns, four INTs on the season. He averaged 158.8 yards per passing per game. Eric Gray comes into the ball game averaging about 93 yards on the ground. So if you're Tennessee, you have to find a way to run the ball and really shrink this game down a whole lot. But here is something that doing my research makes me even more confident that Florida is going to pull away in the second half. I want you to take a look at Tennessee in their last four ball games in their second half struggles versus Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama, and Kentucky. Their offense has scored a combined 14 points in those four ball games, seven against Auburn and seven against Alabama. Now, take a look at what their defense has given up in those second halves versus those same four teams. Auburn scored 20, Arkansas scored 24, Alabama scored 20, Kentucky scored 17. That's 81 points by their opponents in the second half alone. That's 20 points per game. This is why Tennessee gets blowed out in the second half. It's their inability to score, and their opponents find a way to get points on the board. Tennessee, their offense in those same four games has averaged 13 and a half points per game. Their opponents, about 34 points per game. I expect this game to be close in the first half, but once the halftime is over, expect Florida to pull away in the second half and really put Jeremy Pruitt and Philip Fulmer firmly on the hot seat because at some point, one of those two are going to have to answer for the Tennessee offense being as bad as it's been, especially in the second half after both teams come out from intermission.